There's yet more rumors on the RTX 50 Super Series. Does that mean that NVIDIA thinks that the VRAM and RAM crisis is about to be over? Welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. This is our Q&A for July 2026, Part 1. We're going to talk about NVIDIA's move to launch the RTX 50 Super Series after delaying it because of VRAM prices. Does that mean that the RAM apocalypse is almost over? Should you be waiting for those 50 Supers? We'll also go over the Steam Machine. What are my thoughts on the Steam Machine package? What equivalent can you get right now, either as a pre-built or build your own, and does it even make any sense? And of course, we'll take all your PC building questions. If you get value out of this video, please give it a like, of course, subscribe for more cool PC content. Let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for additional 25% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. All right, let's talk about what else, the 50 Super Series. And I think this is important whether or not you want to buy one of these cards, because it's going to tell us a lot about where PC hardware prices are going to go in 2026, the rest of it, and 2027. ARES wants to know only one question: RTX 50 Supers or next-gen GPUs, are they coming in the first quarter of 2027? Possibly even earlier. Calvin wants to know something similar. They've heard there's going to be a 5080 Super, 5080 Ti. Should these folks be buying something right now, or should they be waiting for some Super Series? And what do we expect pricing to be? Well, so here's the good news. I think this portends very good things. This is all the way back November 10th of last year. Now, we were already in the beginnings of the memory apocalypse, the RAM apocalypse, basically. And that's when we initially got the first message that the 50 Super Series that we were expecting at the beginning of 2026 was going to be delayed. And the delay was due to what else? Potential VRAM prices. And the reason NVIDIA was delaying this, nobody knew what VRAM pricing was going to be. So how could they release this thing? Then early 2026, after CES, we then got, oh no, the 60 series might miss 2027, might get kicked out to 2028. And the 50 Super Series was being pushed back to the third quarter of 2026. Now, as I film this right now, we are just entering the third quarter of 2026, but we did get the good news recently that the 50 Super Series might be back on, and that came in the second quarter. So actually an earlier decision than NVIDIA thought they were going to make. So what does all that portend for us for the 50 Super Series? And I've got the cards right here. I'll blow this up a little bit so we can all read what kind of cards we expect coming soon. But basically, I think this is very good news. It means that the AI bubble is bursting. It means that NVIDIA internally expects VRAM prices to come down, expects RAM prices, all the other PC hardware prices. Otherwise, they would not be doing this. I want you to hold on to that piece of information. If AI was booming to such a degree that they were going to be able to blow through all these Samsung 3GB VRAM chips, the GDDR7 ones, on AI alone, they would be doing that. They make a lot more money on those AI cards than they do on the gaming cards, and they would just keep selling what they've got right now, just keep dribbling out. The fact that they're not doing that, the fact that now we've got rumors that, in fact, the 50 Super Series is moving ahead, kind of portends good things, I think, for GDDR7 prices, which are the highest end VRAM chips out there right now. GDDR6 is what AMD uses in most of its GPUs. And of course, it's what NVIDIA used in the 40 series. So I think this portends good things in terms of where NVIDIA internally thinks we're at. Now, there's also some element of downspecing here. Let's talk about that. So originally we expected to get the RTX 5080 Super, same core count basically, higher TGP, higher TDP on it, and 8 gigabytes more VRAM because it's 50% more. The 3 gigabyte chips instead of 2 gigabyte chips, so it's 50% more VRAM in total. That's over the 5080. Now you wouldn't say, hey, maybe in that somewhere in that 55 watts of extra power, they're also going to more heavily overclock these, and it's a different, slightly different stepping of the die. Not that big a deal. Then, of course, we got the 5070 Ti Super. We have not heard a lot about this card, by the way. They're already having problems with the 5070 Ti. It's entirely possible this one's going to take a back seat. Again, 50 watts more TDP and 8 gigs more VRAM. The 5070 Super, I think, is going to be more important for NVIDIA. Now, that one's going to go to 18 gigs of VRAM, and it is going to get about a 5% core count increase Only 25 additional watts on it though. So that is a little curious because not only do we have 6 gigs more VRAM, we also have more cores, but the TDP is not going up that much. So we'll have to wait and see in terms of where that's going to eke out in terms of performance. And we got the 5060 12 gigabyte, which we're not sure if they're going to call a 5060 Super or 5060 12 gigabyte. I guess we'll wait for that one. At the same time, we've seen the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte essentially being phased out. I mean, those things are like $570 right now. Remember, the MSRP is $429. The reason it's floating up that high, 16 gigs of VRAM. NVIDIA, I'm sure, wants to replace it with a 12 gigabyte model at that $430 MSRP. So the 5060 12 gigabyte, I suspect will come in probably right under $429, maybe $419, maybe $399, something like that. They're definitely going to charge you more than they are right now for the 5060, which is like $330 to $360. Then in terms of the pricing, where do I expect these cards to come in? I expect like the 5080 Super is probably not going to be $999. It's just not in the current environment. Even if the VRAM pricing situation gets better, I expect if it gets significantly better, $1,200 minimum for this. They'll continue to sell the 5080 more than likely with 16 gigs of VRAM to it and like a lower stepping of that die. Then of course we'll have the 5070 Ti kind of around that $900-ish price point. The 5070 Super, I expect they want to price it to go head to head with both the 9070 and the 9070 XT. So I'd expect something $649 to $699. Kind of give it that more acceptable price point, maybe $649. It's $100 more than the current price. It's where a lot of the current 5070s are selling. However, we did see for Prime Day, for instance, a lot of those 5070s are getting closer to their MSRP because, again, only 12 gigs of VRAM on them, so they are a little bit cheaper than all these 16 gigabyte cards out there. Then in terms of the 5060 12 gigabyte, I think they're going to effectively replace the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte with that card. And it's possible they'll even give it the 5060 Ti die, right? A slightly better die to it, and they'll just call it the 5060 12 gigabyte. But I wouldn't hold my breath. I think NVIDIA's got a long history of basically taking the same card. In the past, they would have given us a 12 gigabyte model first and then given us an 8 gigabyte model. They're basically giving us an 8 gigabyte model first, and then they're like, oh, and here for $100 more, you could get 4 more gigs of VRAM. I do expect that's what's going to happen. So should you wait for the RTX 50 Super Series? That's the big question, right? I think that we are probably going to see at least the 5060 12 gigabyte probably this year. I don't think they'd let the 5060 Ti 16 gigabyte languish to these prices. Of course, NVIDIA is super focused on AI right now, so maybe they're just a kind of eye on, no longer on the ball on that one. But I would expect the 50 Super Series to come in early 2027. I do expect them for CES, and I'm fingers crossed we'll get some additional confirmation as the summer ends, basically, and as we get into the fall. But I do think we are at least going to get that 5060 Super a little bit sooner. All right, Mormon Dude and Harvey Birdman want to know, other creators have given prices, but at what price do you think this Steam Machine starts to make sense? Harvey Birdman wants to know, you've talked briefly about the Steam Machine in other videos, but you should have a dedicated segment on the best PC replacement, substitute, or equivalent for the Steam Machine. In other words, if you're going to criticize this thing, Jason, I appreciate these comments. You got to put your money where your mouth is. So let's do that. I appreciate the challenge. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's first start off with a quick look at the Steam Machine and its performance. $1,049 gets you 512 gig SSD, 16 gigs of DDR5, single stick, by the way. DDR5 is dual channel, but you're not using the full bandwidth, basically. And then you basically get it in a small form factor box here. Again, $1,049, and you do get SteamOS natively installed, and I get that. What would I get instead? I mean, what would I recommend to somebody? I mean, look, you're gonna probably have to install SteamOS yourself. I don't think it's that hard to do. There's already some guides online on how to do that. I would pick up something like this, Zotac RTX 5050 gaming PC with a Ryzen 5500, 16 gigs of DDR4, and a 1 terabyte NVMe. It's got a Budget air cooler on it. In fact, it's got a nice little digital readout to it. It's a nice overall package. It looks great. If you want to put this under your TV, I know somebody said, well, it's got RGB. I don't want that on my TV. You can turn the RGB off, Just turn the RGB off. It's okay to do. You can usually go in the BIOS and turn it off, or you can typically just disconnect the cables if you really, really want to get into it. So this is what I would do instead for a pre-built. Now, $900, you're saving, what is that? $150, I should say. So you can pick up controllers with that. You can pick up games with that. You can kind of do whatever you want. And this is future upgradable. The Steam Machine is not future upgradable. Yeah, possibly the memory on that. Again, it's going to use SODIMM memory, and then you might have to futz around with what kind of timings it's going to use. Not going to have as wide compatibility as something like this is going to. You could drop a 5800X3D and put a, RTX 5080 in this thing, and obviously you probably need a PSU as well. But then what kind of FPS can you expect? So Gamers Nexus, of course, they have a Steam machine. They did the benchmarks on this. Here is Cyberpunk 2077. Now this is just 1080p Ultra. 1080p Ultra, because if we look at the Steam machine, by the way, I just want to point this out because this is really irritating. And I get that they had to change some things up because of what they initially promised and what they're able to deliver, big gulf between that because of the hardware prices. But they said right here, up to 4K gaming. That didn't used to say that until recently. It said 4K 60. 4K 60 is a big promise. It takes a big GPU to do that. You can't get that with the current laptop GPU that they're slamming into this thing. And let's just take a look at it between what they promised and the reality, because if we look at Cyberpunk 2077, where's the Steam machine? It's all the way down here. It's not even 60 FPS at 1080p Ultra. It's not even 60 FPS. And look, yes, you can turn on upscaling. You are not going to get to 4K 60. So that's why they had to walk back that, and they had to change all their marketing language on this. And still the price is significantly higher than people were predicting when they thought it was going to be a 4K 60 machine, 58 average FPS. Our RTX 5050, 69 average FPS basically, versus 58. So 59 versus 69. So it's basically 20% faster to use an RTX 5050. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was a relatively lightweight game that ran on a lot of hardware, and it ran really, really well. With the Steam machine, 50 FPS, 49.7 versus where our RTX 5050 go. Doesn't look like they tested it for this one, but between the Arc B580 and the 5060, I'd probably fall somewhere around that 60 average FPS mark. So again, probably about 20% faster, and it's something that's future upgradable, and I can buy it for significantly cheaper. But let's say you were just gonna build your own PC, and let's not even use Newegg like RAM combo deals. I guarantee you I can beat the Steam machine without even using combo deals from Newegg, which I don't want to say are cheating because those are real deals that you can actually get. But let's do that. Here's a Ryzen 5500. We'll take a look at a couple different configurations if we want. In terms of the motherboard, we're just looking for something that's good enough. Obviously, the motherboard you're getting with that is not great. Now, if we want future upgradability, I would recommend going B550 over like B450 or A520 so we can get PCIe Gen 4. If we ever decide to drop in a Ryzen 5800 X3D, let's go with the B550M Pro VDH Wi-Fi. It's a great kind of more budget motherboard. The cooler, the 5500 comes with one. It's absolutely fine. For the RAM, we want to just make sure that we're getting like what is essentially first word 10 nanosecond latency on it. It's either 3200 CL16 or 3600 CL18. And we just want to spend as little as we can. Woo, PNY, come on in hot. Is that a real kit? That's a real kit. That's a real kit you can buy. I'm telling you, the DDR4 is definitely coming down in price pretty rapidly. So let's add that for $100 right now, but you can add $10, $15 more if you want. Then if we just want to get kind of like for like right now, so we're going to go with 512 gigs. Let's make sure it's an NVMe SSD. We don't want to end up with a SATA drive. SATA drive would be fine too, I suppose, if you can save a little bit of money. This P300 right here is a drive I've continued to recommend, or the 88 Legend was one that was on super sale. Again, not the fastest drive in the world. They're PCIe Gen 3, but you're never going to know the difference between the two drives. Let's pick out a case real quick, and then we'll figure out what card we can put in here. Just something cheap. We could go with the Cooler Master Master box for like $40 here, but then we have to add some fans. It only comes with one. Even if we get a 3-pack of fans, it's like $15. That gets us up to $55. And at that price, you might as well just go with the Fantex XT M25 here for a little bit less. It's a great PC case. By the way, we may do a Steam machine kind of killer build for a live stream build for members sometime soon. So here we are at $390. I guess we don't have a power supply. Let's go ahead and get probably the best value PSU right now, which is the Roswell, not the VNW. That's not the one we're looking for. We're looking for the VSB. Here it is, $49, Roswell VSB. It's semi-modular as well, which is really nice. 650 watts. Cables are not bad to work with at all. So at $440, that's for our base system. And now we can just choose the GPU that we want. Well, honestly, for that price, unless I'm missing something here, I would probably go with a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte, kind of just right off the I usually go price lowest to highest. Let's dodge all the 8 GB ones. There's a couple of them out there. Right now, you can actually pick up the Sapphire Pulse for $399. You can actually pick up a number of models for $399 at Newegg. However, PC Part Picker isn't pulling in that like extra discount code, so you got to go to Newegg and click on it. But let's just keep it as is right now. $870. Now, you have to assemble this yourself. You got to get an operating system for it. Steam OS is free. If we wanted to buy like a Windows key, like somebody that we use, for instance, you could get one for like $20, $25, or even a full-blown retail license, not an OEM license, but a full retail license for $100 more. And it's still at $870. I mean, my goodness, this is a significantly better build than we could otherwise have. So this is what we get for $870. We got a Ryzen 5500. You got a good B550 motherboard. You got 16 gigs of DDR4 RAM. You got a 512 gigabyte NVMe SSD that's good. And you have a 96 XT 16 gigabyte, which is insane. And we don't even have to worry about the fact that our CPU is only PCIe Gen 3 because the 96 XT, all versions of it, use the full 16-lane PCIe connector. So PCIe Gen 3 is no problem for that GPU and the CPU combo. We've got a good case, a combo that's relatively compact. We can turn off the RGB if we don't want it. And we got a great PSU for $870. You assemble this thing and you're good to go. So this is what I would do instead. And honestly, at this point, if we wanted to go faster, I bet you I could even fit AM5 into this. All right, Yes Sir wants to know, do you think it's worth upgrading to a Ryzen 7 5800X3D if I recently built my setup with a Ryzen 5600? So generally, like, who should upgrade to the 5800X3D? We did a whole boost my build on this, but kind of just to put it in a little bit of an encapsulation here, kind of give you the short answer. Number one, let's start off with the fact that you can now pick up the 5800X3D everywhere, which is super nice, by the way. Now, when this initially hit the market, scalpers tried to scalp it. They thought, oh no, it won't be enough supply. The good news was within about a week or like 4 or 5 days, there was enough supply to kind of push that off, and scalpers got burned. And I love watching scalpers get burned. They had these listings up for like $600. They bought it for $349. And you know, because when you bought it from Newegg, you were not able to return it. You can now return it. It's now returnable. However, at the time on launch day, it was not returnable. They would go ahead and give you a new CPU if it didn't work, but they're not going to give you a refund for it. So all those scalpers that bought it early think they're going to charge $750 for it totally got burned. Absolutely love to see it. But the question is, who should be buying this thing? And if you look at AMD's numbers for it, an upgrade over a 5600X, unless you have a relatively higher end GPU, doesn't make a lot of sense. It just doesn't. $349 right now is just a little shy of like a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte GPU. So what should you buy if you're upgrading? If you've got an older system with a 5600, you probably have at least a 3050 or a 3060 GPU in there, maybe like a 5060. It doesn't really make sense to then dump all your money into this CPU. However, if you've got a 9070, 9070 XT, if you've got a 5070, a 5070 Ti, bigger GPU like that, but the question, of course, is then why would you have built with a 5600? So for somebody with that recent a system, I can't see a lot of use cases where it actually makes sense. Where I think this makes the most sense is somebody with a Ryzen 3600 who built 5 years ago, maybe a 1650 Super or a 1660 Super, where they're looking at, hey, I need both a GPU upgrade and a CPU upgrade. Should I stick with the 3600 and just upgrade the GPU? I think if you're looking to spend about $400, in that case, I would also go ahead and upgrade just the GPU to a 9060 XT 16 gigabyte for like $399. I would not buy this unless you were also going to upgrade the GPU to something like a 9070 or 9070 XT, and obviously we had more money to do the overall upgrade. We go through this in a lot more detail based on a lot more variables in that Boost My Build video, so I will leave it linked down in the video description for you to check out. Let me know your thoughts on all this stuff down in the comments. The 50 Super Series, are you excited that this is coming? Are you excited that maybe it portends cheaper hardware prices? What do you think about the Steam Machine, and what do you think about the 5800X3D as well? If you got value out of this video, please give it a like. Of course, subscribe for more cool PC content, like our recent look at the GPU market. Believe it or not, MSRP GPU prices are back. That's right. We actually saw GPUs for MSRP. Where are GPU prices going for the rest of the year? Check out this video right here, and we'll catch you on the next one.